guys, so with the release of Jurassic World Dominion, I thought it would be the perfect time to finally do a Jurassic Park Jurassic World ranking, because I actually have never done one before, and I do enjoy the franchise as a whole, and with there being so many films now, we kind of have two trilogies, it seems appropriate to finally do like a definitive ranking for the series. But for right now, this is the definitive ranking for me personally. I'll be very excited to hear your personal rankings in the comment section down below. Make sure you leave those, whether you've seen Jurassic World Dominion or not. But without further ado though, let's get right into my last place pick. At my number 6 pick, I have Jurassic Park 3. I feel like this will probably be one of the lower picks for a lot of people. Actually, as I grew up, I watched this film quite often as a kid because it was on a lot when I was a child, and I liked it a bit more when I was a child because on further rewatches as I've gotten older, I probably liked it less and less. There's just not very much I'm a big fan of in Jurassic Park 3. Sure, it is cool that Alan Grant is returning to the franchise, but the story here is just not very compelling, even though the setup for it is so simple. It is very much just a straight up rescue mission. It just goes in so many weird different directions, and overall, just as a film, it feels very sloppily put together, and that isn't just due to the story. I mean, the VFX themselves is probably the worst that we've seen in the entire franchise. The dinosaurs here, they don't look the greatest. You can certainly tell there were some sort of production issues behind the scenes. I think Joe Johnston did his best to try and salvage the film in some shape or form, because you do have a competent cast here. William H. Macy, Téa Leoni. There's just nothing about Jurassic Park 3 that's overly memorable, except for the hilarious nightmare sequence where Alan is talked to by a dinosaur.
Alan. Alan.
I mean, that's meme-worthy, but other than that, I don't imagine most people have fond memories of this film. At number 5, I have Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Now, up until this last rewatch I did, this was probably my last place pick. There's a couple videos I've done in the past where I wasn't particularly fond of the film, but on this last rewatch, I found some redeeming qualities. Not a ton, but enough for it to at least not be the last place spot. Many of those redeeming qualities I would attribute to the way that the film is directed. I think that J.A. Bayona did a great job crafting tension and scares with the dinosaurs. As someone who's a massive horror fan, I love the part in the third act where it was just a haunted mansion with dinosaurs running around in it. I mean, that's pretty cool in and of itself, but it is one of the very few moments in the film that I did find myself overly enjoying. Because outside of a few fun moments, the film is bogged down exponentially by the script. I do still like Owen and Claire, but it's just mind-numbingly frustrating watching these characters almost actively make the worst decision possible at every single turn, and then there's subplots left and right that lead nowhere, terrible side characters, some of the worst in the entire franchise, and possibly some of the most cartoonish villains to date. I mean, that is kind of a staple of some of these films to have these over-the-top villains, but this is like a whole other level of cartoonish, and they just completely waste Jeff Goldblum in the film. Like, I was excited going into the film we were going to get Jeff Goldblum's character back, and Ian Malcolm doesn't really do all that much. I'm still kind of baffled by the decision at the end of the film where Macy, the human clone, ends up freeing the dinosaurs and just letting them unleash onto the world. I mean, ever since this film came out, that decision has just really irked me, I guess. But outside of some visual flair and some fun scenes here and there, this is one of those films I'm not particularly fond of. Jurassic Park 3 and Fallen Kingdom are the two that I just genuinely am not a big fan of. All the other ones you'll see. I mean, they're either enjoyable or films that I love. At number 4, I have The Lost World Jurassic Park. Now, following up the original Jurassic Park, you know, it's kind of hard to hold a candle to that film, but for what it is, I think that Spielberg did a good enough job. It was a valiant effort here to have a good sequel. The general premise following Ian Malcolm was interesting enough for a sequel setup. It's certainly bogged down by other storylines that don't pay off as well, like the studying of the dinosaurs or saving his girlfriend. It certainly is missing a lot of that oomph factor with a lot of the characters because we are missing many of the characters from the original, but I think that Spielberg was able to craft a decent enough film, especially when it comes to the dinosaur scares, because the dinosaur stuff in this film, I think it is almost on par with the original film, especially when it comes to crafting scary, tension-filled moments. Definitely more so in the second half of the film. The first half doesn't have many of them, but the second half of the film where the dinosaurs are let loose in San Francisco, I mean, that's pretty entertaining in my book. If the first half of the film was as strong as the second half, I think this would have been a much better film all around, because the first half of the film is kind of just weak when it comes to the pacing, but I think it's a solid enough sequel. It does have its detractors, but I think that Jeff Goldblum kind of saves this one for me, because I think Jeff Goldblum always does a great job in these films, but it's definitely not as good as the original. At number 3, I have Jurassic World Dominion, the latest entry in the Jurassic Park franchise. I do have a whole review, so I'm not going to touch upon too too much about my thoughts here, but if you want to hear my full thoughts, go to that review. But for this being the big epic conclusion to this new trilogy of Jurassic World films, it didn't deliver the big epic conclusion that I wanted, but it still does a decent job delivering the big exciting set pieces of action that the franchise has kind of done in these most recent Jurassic World films involving many different dinosaurs. I also love the blending here of the original cast in with the Jurassic World cast. Both of them get an ample amount of time separately to shine while also inevitably teaming up, which is about as awesome as you'd expect as a longtime fan of the franchise. Nostalgia aside, I wish the story was a little bit better all around the edges. If just a handful of things were fixed in this entry, it would probably be second place and not third. Coming in at number 2, I have Jurassic World. While I do absolutely admit that the first Jurassic World can be absolutely ridiculous at times, I can't help but every single time that I rewatch the film, I have a lot of fun with it. Pushing the franchise into a more action-focused direction I thought was a really smart idea. Sure, it does still have some genuinely terrifying moments involving these dinosaurs in this park now that there are finally people going to the park, but it's the characters that we follow along for the journey themselves that I think elevates this a bit. I like these characters a bit more than I do in some of the other sequels. Owen and Claire especially. I mean, the kids, they're not that great, but Owen and Claire, I think they are the best part of this. Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt. They're just so charming, and then you throw in that bond that Chris Pratt's character has with the Raptor Blue. To go along with the over-the-top blockbuster nature, we have an even more ridiculous dinosaur villain, the Indominus Rex. It's like genetically altered so it can camouflage itself and its heat signature, which, you know, that's absolutely absurd, but what do you expect from a movie like this? Pretty much all of the dinosaur action in this film is just pure blockbuster entertainment. And when we reach the final battle involving them and the T-Rex from the original film, it's amazing. Like I said, the film is absolutely absurd. Like, there's no question about it, but it is one of those turn your brain off kind of adventures that I find myself gravitating towards. And at number 1, we have Jurassic Park. You know this had to be the first in the list. I mean, it's the best film in the franchise, and it's probably one of the best films in general. What Steven Spielberg was able to do with this film was absolutely groundbreaking in the way that this idea was executed from the Michael Crichton novel. It's quintessential blockbuster entertainment through and through with the way that Spielberg crafts these moments of wonder, while also sprinkling in many moments where these dinosaurs are absolutely terrifying. This film was almost 30 years old, and a lot of the effects here still hold up. It's a masterclass in VFX work, bringing all these dinosaurs to life, showcasing all this childlike wonder, seeing all these characters interact with dinosaurs. It's absolutely amazing. This entry certainly has the best cast of them all: Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, Richard Attenborough, Samuel Jackson, Wayne Knight. The list goes on, but all of them are so well written. It feels often overlooked at times just how well all these characters balance each other out and when it pertains to the ethics of bringing these dinosaurs back or not. And sure, even after almost 3 decades and all these different films, we still are kind of dealing with that question, but I feel like it's the best executed in this very first film. This first film also just has so many amazing, iconic moments. There's so many to list, but some of my favorites, of course, is the T-Rex chase, the raptors going after the kids in the kitchen, just when the characters, including us, are introduced to Jurassic Park and the amazing John Williams score is blasting in the background. Still one of my favorite John Williams scores. But it's just a great film. It's timeless. It's still the best one after all these years. It's something that you can't really top. It's just such an iconic, legendary film. But there you have it. That's all of the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World films ranked in my personal opinion. I'll be very intrigued for what you guys end up thinking, how you feel about your rankings. I'd love to know all your rankings down below, like I said in the beginning, because I'm sure everybody's going to have different rankings, especially the middle films. I think we're all going to probably have the same very first film, but all the other ones, it is very much a toss-up here. Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out the rankings. I really appreciate. Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out the ranking. I really do appreciate that. Make sure to leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you're always up to date with my movie reactions, unboxings, rankings, and more. Next time, we'll see you guys later.